to the Talent Optimization Podcast, the go-to podcast for CEOs and HR professionals wanting to bridge the gap between the strategy and tactical implementation of talent optimization within their organizations. Through interviews, predictive index, and personal experience, your host, Tracy Shirk, helps you discover the facets of talent optimization from both a CEO and HR perspective to truly create the dream team for your organization. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Welcome to the Talent Optimization Podcast. My name is Tracy Shirk, and I'm the Chief Talent Officer here at Elevated Talent Consulting. And today we are talking about something really fun. We're talking about money, but not only money in general, but how money and financial security impacts our staff and what we can do about that. So with me today is Jeanne de Cervens, and Jeanne comes to us from the Georgetown University McDonough School of Business. And we were connected through Surya, who you've probably heard on the podcast earlier. And I was very intrigued by her work around how each of us, based on our background, experiences, socioeconomic classes, et cetera, creates our own wealth in very different ways. So Jeanne, welcome to the show.
Great. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So you have done a tremendous amount of research in the last couple of years. And, you know, when I heard and saw the distinctions between male, female making the same salaries, but yet the financial security, I was astounded. And I don't know why I was, but I was. And then, you know, how that impacts our frontline staff. So I'm curious if you could, you know, give us some insight based on your research.
Sure. Well, just tell you a little bit about the research. We did it through the AgingWell Hub at Georgetown in 2020, and then again in 2021. Started looking at really the millennials and Gen Z workers and how they were thinking, feeling, you know, financially, just about everything, and then just checked in with them again and the end of 2021 just to say, okay, what has changed? You had some goals. How do you achieve those goals, et cetera? And what we learned is, I guess, first of all, millennials are still struggling. Unfortunately, they have dropped since 2020 in their financial wellness. Almost half are living paycheck to paycheck. 28% said they think they could handle an expected major expense. And their outlook is also not great. 32% said that they don't think that they'll ever be able to have the things that they want. And 32% again also said they think they're securing their financial future. To your point, what is really interesting are the differences even within the generation. So, for example, 45% of millennials overall said finances are controlling my life, but only 29% of Asians said so. And Hispanic, again, were less at 36%. And in terms of future outlooks, one of the most surprising things for us is that, 39% said they would expect to have a better life than their parents. That falls for women at 27%, to your point about that women have really, really been struggling. But surprisingly, Black African-American and Hispanic millennials were above average. So almost half of Black African-Americans said they expected to have a better life than their parents, and 36% Hispanic. And, I'm hoping that this is certainly an outgrowth of the social justice and racial justice movement, that, they see things are improving for them and that the future is looking brighter. And I hope that will continue to be true.
That's amazing. Just that distinction between the different races and what that looks like. You mentioned something at the beginning, and sometimes I think that it's really important to define what we're talking about, right? So you mentioned the word financial wellness, and I would love to define that so we're all talking about the same thing.
Right. Well, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the first that really defined it. And there are a lot of things that go into financial wellness. So it is looking at, your present circumstances. How are you feeling? Are you living paycheck to paycheck? Do you have things you have but no emergency savings? And then also what your financial look like is. Do you think you're in control? Are you securing your financial future? What do you think your prospects for life is? Because as we found in the workplace, if you're not financially well, you're financially stressed. And that has been proven to have a tremendous impact on productivity at work.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I think we see this over and over, especially with the clients that we're working with. If there's not that financial security of, how am I going to put shoes on my kids? How am I going to pay for this meal? How am I going to do those things? It not only impacts their ability to focus and be productive and fulfilled at work, but they're not fully at work because they're worrying about all these other things. And it's such a downward spiral.
Exactly. So really the question is then how can we help them? Because we all have an interest in our workforce and having them come, to work and with a good mindset and feel like they're contributing, to their family and their financial future. And so when we looked at some of that and said, okay, what can we do? And certainly a lot of financial wellness programs, first thing is, and we asked them a series of questions, basically, do you have a budget? Do you have a short-term financial plan? Do you have a long-term financial plan? And we found out that, so when we first went out to the field in 2020, it was right in the middle of the pandemic, but before vaccinations, before anybody was even thinking about going back to work. And it was pretty bleak. And their millennials that we talked to all had strong, I guess it awakened in them this desire that we really need to get our financial house in order. Mm-hmm. So they had indicated that, their top three financial goals were paying down debt, building an emergency fund. Certainly when for all the people who lost their jobs, that was the first things that, that really hit them, and saving for retirement. And then we went back to them in 21 and said, well, how do you do, according to these and some of the other goals that you stated? Mm-hmm. And it was really mixed. We found so I'll start with the bright spots because I always love to start with the good news. Yeah. Is that as many who said they wanted to pay down debt, which is just under a half, actually did take steps to pay down debt.
It's like half of them found the Dave Ramsey program or something similar, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was harder for Black African Americans than whites, but they did, do that. About a third said they really wanted to have a budget and stick to a budget, and a third said that they took action to stick to the budget. I think one of the most interesting things is that 43% said they improved their credit score, and that was more than even had it as a goal. And for me, I think that's a really positive indicator because, the advantages of improved credit scores, obviously, lower interest rates on loans, access to jobs, credit checks, things like that. But just as important are the benefits. How do you get an improved credit score? You show that you can pay bills on time. You don't take out additional credit cards. You lower your credit, utilization, et cetera. So all those are behaviors will help them be really better stewards of their finances.
So I'm curious, within this research, and I don't know if you asked this question or not, how were they able to do that? What support and education did they get? I guess is question one. And then question two is, what part did their employer play in that?
Yeah. So what we found is this is really, I think, really, really interesting about how they get their financial information. And this is something that employers need to take note that first of all, not all millennials are the same. And I know we love to group, categories and generations as monolithic, and certainly they're not. So when asked, and I think this is true for most every generation, the family was the number one source that they turned to for financial advice. Almost half of them said family. Interestingly, females were a little less likely to turn to family, and Black African Americans much less likely to do so. And then, online resources, friends, stories, all were close second, third, fourth. Financial advisors and employers rated a bit lower. Only 16% said they turned to the financial advisors and employers. And financial advisors was not that surprising because it may not be that they all have financial advisors.
Right. But the employer
for employers,
is,
16%.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Very
and
much
I'm wondering, unfortunately, the survey didn't allow us to ask open-ended questions as why is that? And is it because maybe they're getting a lot of the information through their retirement plan provider at work and they don't consider that the employer? We just don't know why, but I think it's a wake-up call that, we've got to figure this out, because
Absolutely.
We do know that the employers give a tremendous amount of financial information and education help. And so how do you get to them? So we asked that question, well, how do they like to receive information? How do they make financial decisions? So what we found is that overall there was a clear preference for asynchronous communication. So like an email, app, or text, with email being the clear favorite. Again, here is where a lot of differences came out in gender and race. So males are more likely to have in-person sessions to receive advice and education, while females less likely so. Females also are more likely to prefer receiving information by email. Black African Americans chose phone as the preferred method, as followed closely behind by males. Well, it's a very, very low preference for females. Which is, females probably are doing more multitasking and things like that. There are a lot of assumptions in there, but it really does show you that, if you are trying to reach these people, that you just can't assume that this is their preferred method. And then
what's great about that is, so often just asking the question, right, and building that trust. And I know you did a lot of research on how small employers can, support employees with the financial previous to these surveys, but so often what we find with our clients is that when we specifically ask employees, how do you want to be communicated with, and follow that, we've just built the trust because we asked the question and we followed through and did what we said we were going to do.
Exactly. And, you could be providing the best information in the world, but if you're not providing it in a manner that they can receive it and digest it, then, it's lost. And we found that again with financial decision making. So even if you've got all the information, how do you make decisions? And there was no clear preference. They were all over the board in this. I think 23% said they like to just try it out first. And if it doesn't work, try something else, little nuggets. So I would love to follow up with the question, do you actually stick with anything, or do you just, do that? Others, listen to stories from others, like to read about it. Yeah. So it was really all over the board. So how you present it, whether it's charts and graphs, information in advance, anecdotes, whatever you've got to be able, as a communicator, to be flexible and be able to provide this information in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's providing the information, but it's also, a lot of our listeners are small businesses. So for small business owners listening in and saying, okay, only 16%, of employers had an influence on the financial well-being of our staff. And we know we look at retention, we look at hiring folks right now, this is a really big deal. And you and I, and probably every other person, is going to spend a dollar very differently. And what we know about how that dollar spends will have an impact on that, especially you can only spend it once. But, if we save it, or what that looks like, and what the employer matches, all those things. But we all hear it differently, especially if we're living paycheck to paycheck. And, that decision between putting, $30 a paycheck into a retirement, knowing that $30 is matched and turns into 60, versus now I have dinner for X number of nights, how does an employer support an employee in that and build the trust to even get to that conversation?
Right. Well, we found, so a couple of things on that. We found that just in terms of for employees, when they're looking at staying with their employer or looking to new employers, 63% across the board said that employee benefits are more important than ever, and that may be a deciding factor in where they go to work. So I don't think any employer should minimize the impact of some of these things that we're talking about. And that 16% was really how they get their financial information. Does not necessarily mean that if their employer has a 401k or other retirement savings plan, maybe they auto enroll, which be great. Mm-hmm. And so maybe then they're not really that interested in the financial information because it's just being done for them and they don't need to think about it. And, some of the benefits like student loan, debt repayment, things like that are also all really, really helpful.
Absolutely.
So and again, as we said at the beginning, financial stress has been proven to have, an impact on the workforce and productivity.
Yep, absolutely. So as we kind of chat through this, and from your research, what's a key takeaway that you have for executives listening in today?
I'd say not to minimize the importance of their role as providing information, that, there is so much information out there that it can be, and I think really is overwhelming, and it's really contradictory. So this is the workforce, and through their benefits, and they're helping educate how to put this together. During a budget, it's having, a plan to save for retirement so they don't have to spend their time shopping around, is all really, really helpful. And then secondly, don't lump all your employees together. Ask them how they want to receive the information. Check in with them. Do you want to have one-on-one discussion? How can we help? And let them know that they're to help.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say is make their decisions easy and give them the support and the information the way they need to hear it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
You like those sound bites? And what about for our HR professionals listening in? Like what can our HR professionals do to support this? And I want to add a caveat to this is, when I was early in my HR career, early 20s, and I'm responsible for sharing this, I'm like, I don't know what this is. How am I supposed to be the one that's sharing this with everybody else?
Well, and that's why we don't have much financial education in schools, because, it's been proven that, the teachers don't know this stuff. But,
right.
Through the benefit providers, whether it's, healthcare, HSAs, retirement plans, whatever, those are the ones that really generate the education and the materials. Mm-hmm. So just acting from an HR standpoint as a conduit to say, look, you're asking great questions. This is phenomenal that you're thinking about this. Here's all the information. I may not be a financial professional, but here's the number where you can call to find out more.
Yeah. And I think too, for our HR professionals listening in, you don't have to know all these answers. You just need to know where to resource the information from to get it in, and especially for our small businesses out there, you can offer a simple plan. There's many ways to offer it that allow your employees to have some of that information and that education through a financial advisor without it costing a ton to the organization. And I think that's a really, really important point to make as well.
Exactly. And, now with, as you said, there's so many retirement plans that are built just for small businesses, recognizing all the reasons why it's difficult for small business to take that on. So there are plans out there. And if you can make it easy there on the employees for automatic enrollment, work against inertia and everything else, then that would go a long way to helping them.
And the other thing I found is a lot of them will actually come in and do budget workshops. I mean, just that simple 101 budget workshop. Here's an Excel spreadsheet. Let's walk you through it. Even if they're not contributing to it, how do we get to where the answer is yes? Like, how do we get to yes? And even if it's more information, that is still a yes that potentially improves their financial well-being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And while nobody likes there really aren't any strict rules. Sometimes at this point, strict rules help. At least give as much as the company match more. You should be giving at least 10% and maybe bumping it up. So, I do think sometimes, and I have heard the new employees ask, well, I don't know what to do. What should I do? You tell me. And while as an HR professional, I can't really tell, say, well, this is kind of the standard.
Yeah. Yeah. And just even knowing and getting that out of your financial advisor sometimes is really hard. So for our financial advisors, because I know we have a few that listen, give us some resources so we can help you to help our employees.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, Jeanne, it was a pleasure to have you on. And in the show notes, we will link to you and to the report, and to the Wellness Center, et cetera. So all of that will be linked into the show notes. So if individuals want to reach out to you and learn more, they definitely can. And I think the key takeaway from today is really pay attention to your employees and where they're at and providing that information to them for them to use it or not.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tracy. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Talent Optimization Podcast. You'll find more tools and resources for CEOs and HR professionals looking to bridge the strategies versus implementation gap of talent optimization at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. We've also created a free, valuable resource for you to begin bridging the gap called the Talent Optimization Foundation Membership Program. You can access it for free at elevatedtalentconsulting.com/foundation. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode to learn more about talent optimization and creating a dream team for your organization.